Hi everyone, this is Leela Harris here with Kindi Gill and Neerava Nash. And in this episode, we're going to talk about loneliness and something universally we all have felt at one time or another. There's so much we could say about this. I know I've dealt with it a lot on different levels in my life, from just not feeling that I was fitting in, not feeling that, I was loved enough or I got enough attention. What do you guys have to say about it?
It's interesting, as you said that, I was immediately transported into school life.
Yeah.
Instantly felt that same thing, the fact that I wasn't the same as everybody else. And because I wasn't the same, I then didn't fit in. And I also recall being called a lot of names, and therefore, because I wasn't the social bee that had a lot of friends, I for sure had that sense that I don't belong, and therefore I'm on my own. I feel lonely. Like that sense was quite strong. Although now, as an adult, I've got a better understanding of the depth of feeling around the loneliness. But at that time, with school friendships, it was extremely important.
Yeah, and that's such a big deal for a child, the social, the peer thing.
And if you don't feel like you're part of the pack that looks normal, whatever the normal is in your environment.
Yeah.
Because I know in your environment, you were, I think, the only white face there at school.
Yeah, because I spent about the first 6 or 7 years in Baghdad because my family, I have an Iraqi family and part of my family is Iraqi and part of them are American. But yeah, the first 6 or 7 years in school and I was the only white child. And I felt I could definitely resonate with what you're talking about and feeling whatever that was the normal, wherever you are as a child, you just want to be in that normal. And then when I moved to the States, I felt like I stood out because my English sounded different than other people's and there was cultural things. And then when people would know who my father was, they would call him a foreigner. And I would hear things about Arabs and all these things. So then there was that. So it was interesting to feel like I didn't fit into either world. But I tried really hard. So, yeah.
And this was the individual worlds at home, or how school or people outside of your home environment were relating to it?
It was outside of the home environment as a child. That's what I felt. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine was the same.
And it was 6 or 7 school years that you were, like, once you started school?
No, I think I was 7 when we came here to the States.
Oh, okay.
So I had, I think, about 2 years of school.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, because we don't, plan these talks and we choose a topic and, at first choosing the topic of loneliness, like trying to kind of dig in and feel it, because right now I'm so craving and enjoying my alone time. But as you're starting to speak about school, Kindi, you mentioned about if you weren't in the one, the group that fits in. I tended to be that in that kind of space, sort of more the popular one, but especially my high school years, looking back, I felt really alone because I was trying to keep up this persona. And I can be honest, totally honest. I think we feel alone when we're not giving ourselves permission or feel safe enough to be authentic. And, in our relationships. So you can be amongst a whole bunch of people and feel totally isolated and alone because we're not really communicating what's really going on inside. And I think I spent my whole high school years that way. University started to change a little bit because I played volleyball on a team where we were always together. And when there was just more safety and more comfort in, sharing more authentically. So I think I felt a little more connected at that time, but probably all my school years, especially junior high and mostly in high school, I think it was all in aloneness looking back. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I watched a TEDx talk recently and it was about the topic of loneliness. Yeah. And there were, I mean, probably no exaggeration, like hundreds of people that were commenting on this talk, because the lady that had spoken had recommended that you needed an anchor of rituals with friends or circumstances where you gather and you sort of, you know, have your little nest egg of conversations and you feel safe. And that apparently was her remedy for loneliness. But the comments that were coming through were mostly from people that have never been able to make friends, don't have family, don't have a network to lean on or rely on. So there was this intense fury inside them that the solution that had been offered for a really painful experience for them involved other people that they were struggling to have in their world.
Right.
And so now when I'm hearing you were in the group of sort of the popular people, and therefore for these people that were talking on this TEDx talk, that's what they crave and they would be desperate for. And yet you're telling us that even in that situation, you felt alone because you weren't able to be completely honest and be yourself.
Yeah.
So that's a fascinating insight, because that might be seen as a privilege to a person who doesn't have people around them at all.
Yeah. And I can relate. When I was listening to you, I was thinking about how I was very shy and just really kind of in myself, and I didn't have really any social skills, like just making small talk and what, you know, we talked about normal, like I wanted that to be normal. And so something changed I think it was my early 20s where I started to kind of come out of my shell. But then I was having lots of friends, and I can now make friends really easily. I feel really comfortable with people. I can talk to people, and but yeah, it's still, I had lots of friends and relationships and all these things, and it was like what you were talking about, Neerava. It was like there was something missing, and I could feel that, you know, I'm trying to live up to people's expectations, trying to make people happy, trying to make sure I don't lose those friendships. And then when you're kind of trying to be lots of people's friends, you definitely lose yourself, because they're all different. And if you're pleasing all these different people, it's just like you're not even there. So yeah, that it was nice not to be totally socially shut down, but yeah, it wasn't fulfilling at all.
So it seems to be that it comes down to what we're thinking inside our head that is actually more important. Our relationship with the conversations going on in our head is more important than whether we are surrounded by people or not. Because if I take myself as an example, I have 3 children and a husband, a busy family life. And yet, even in that situation, really the biggest battle I have is what I am thinking and feeling inside my head as the interactions are happening. Because they're not necessarily always nurturing, and they're not necessarily always supportive. And if there's something missing on the outside, the conversation will go off on a spiral very, very quickly. And it's that needs to be managed to help us to feel more comfortable about anything in life, particularly this topic about feeling lonely, because the truth is we are actually, like I'm separate to you. My body is physically separate to you. So factually, I am a separate entity, and being comfortable in this entity seems to be our biggest sort of task that we've been given, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And it took me a while to realize it will stop needing other people to understand me, to like join me in my experience. It was like constantly kind of trying to connect to others emotionally because of that loneliness and having similar experiences. And being able to let go of that, because yes, we are alone, but there's also, it's about working through those things, those fears and those insecurities that make us kind of disconnect from ourselves and try to like connect with other people, but we're doing it superficially because we want something, we want connection and validation. But there's also that thing that's missing in our lives when we're not ourselves with people, and then we're not connecting to people authentically. So we are missing the true connection when it's kind of from fear. Does that make sense? Because there is a longing sometimes to connect, but not out of necessarily need or fear. It's just to show ourselves, to be visible, and to be honest with another person without manipulating, without being manipulated. That experience.
Yeah, because we all want to be seen, right? We want to be seen until we're able to. I think we're frozen. Is it? Oh, maybe not. Until we're able to see ourselves and acknowledge ourselves and connect with ourselves. So really, we're looking for everything. Doesn't matter what it is outside of ourselves until we learn to find it inside. Slowly, as Mata would say.
Yeah. So even the desire to have the connection outside of us, and that need for a person to be there is to help fill the void that we're feeling inside. But it doesn't matter whether we surround ourselves with 1 or 20 or 200,000 people. If that void isn't quenched and sorted inside, nothing outside is going to fix that situation anyway.
Yeah, because we won't truly be seen because we're not being visible in who we really are.
Yeah.
So we may get attention, but it's not really being visible because we're not showing our true selves, because we're needing to fill the void, if that makes sense.
And is it just visibility, or is it even a sense of completeness? Like if that void was filled inside, we suddenly feel whole, or we're working towards feeling more whole, and then your ability to show up as you are happens naturally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes.
And when there is the comfort inside, the strength, I guess you could say, because to be ourselves and be authentic takes courage. And so once that is, some people have it naturally, more so than others, right? And then I was very shy, so it took a while to be able to really just, connect with that courage inside to speak my truth and to share who I am. I guess it's different for everybody. But then as you guys were talking, for some reason, Robin Williams popped into my mind as someone so loved and, surrounded by what appeared to be wonderful people and, a successful life. And from, the gist of his suicide, from what sort of I took out of it, is somebody desperately, deeply lonely, not able to manage that. So,
and also an identification with the thoughts that were running through the head as well. So when the loneliness gets really, really intense, the voice inside our head becomes sort of really, really strong in what it's saying. And if you begin to believe like it's quenched, like it's negative spiral, that becomes exactly what you're trapped in all the time. So it's almost anguish to be inside your own body because the voice has become so strong. And when I came back when I moved to Vancouver from England, that was my first experience of not being with my sort of leaving the whole life that I knew behind to create a new one here. But it was a massive shock being inside 4 walls without a career to go to, without the excuse of friends or people to hang out with, because there were none immediately when I first arrived. And my relationship with my husband wasn't going very well. So I felt intensely lonely. And I was 40 something years old, and it was my first real acknowledgement of that pain, and how there was a shutdown that was beginning to happen as the loneliness got stronger and stronger, because the voice inside my head had nothing but negative things to say about the circumstances I was now in. And it was just in grief over what I had left behind, and in grief over what was now missing, without seeing that it was really the biggest opportunity I had in my life, because that opportunity brought me to this type of work and what we're doing now, and a sense of like feeling very, very different inside my own skin. And so people out there that don't have people around them or don't have family around them, you know, maybe their soul has chosen to fast track their own evolution into a better place where they begin to become self-sufficient and able to stand in their own two shoes and begin to sort of love who they are. Mm-hmm. But they don't know yet that that's what they've chosen for themselves, because they're too busy, not too busy, but their mind is very much in the lack, like what's missing, what's not there, what's normal that everybody else appears to have that I don't have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of damage that our head is doing because of this idea of what normal is. Like, what is normal? I mean, Leela, you live on your own, right?
Yeah, I chose not to get married, have kids, and I feel really happy to have chosen that. Yeah,
you've not chosen any of that, right? So is that normal, or is the fact that, you know, I have 3 children and a husband and a really crazy busy life, and I'm up at 2:00 in the morning because, you know, we're waiting for one child and the other one's come in drunk, and like what's normal? And Neerava, what's your setup? Like, you had family and now they're independent, and you could be called almost an empty nester in some ways. Is that normal? Like, what is this definition that we even use?
Yeah, I think it's the labels. Like, we have what normal is. If I was to speak for the collective, it would be, well, you find a partner and you get married and you have children, and then they leave, and then you go through this empty nest thing, and then you grow older, and then you get grandchildren, and like that's kind of the universal, like, planetary normal. Mm-hmm. But things are changing a lot now in our last few generations.
Yeah,
a lot of people.
It's really nice to see the freedom where people are choosing and there's less judgment about it. There's just more acceptance that there's all these different lifestyle choices, and nothing wrong with choosing a family or career and all that. But it's really wonderful to see people being more introspective, the younger generations deciding, instead of going into it blindly, like this is what everybody else is doing and this is, you know, happy, you know, family, you know, have the wonderful spouse in the house, and that's the American dream. So, you know, I live in the US, you guys don't, but still, it's even in the Western world, in a lot of places in the world, it's kind of the dream life. But people don't know that not everyone, that's not always fulfilling to people, and it's not always enough. So if you go into it blindly, expecting something without looking inside and asking, okay, what's right for me? It's to me, it's sad, because then especially when people are having children and then they realize, oh, wow, this is huge, you know, like so much work. You guys know, I don't have kids, but I just, I know it's a huge job. So
really, yeah. a lot of this word loneliness does happen for many people, or it rises for many people because they have this idea of what normal is. And then if that normal isn't your reality, then there's something missing for me. Mm-hmm. And that creates the heartache and the pain. So I don't have as many friends, or I don't have parents, or I don't have a family structure to support me, or I don't have a partner, or I don't have children. Like the missing aspect of all of those things causes the pain, because I have to be honest, that's exactly how my pain really sort of looked like it appeared then, but it wasn't really the truth. I've never faced my aloneness. And so coming to Canada was my first opportunity to actually have that experience. But the fear of being lonely and on my own was always there. It was masked over when people were there outside of me, so I didn't have to feel it so intensely.
Yeah, and I was thinking, Kindi, how when you have what society says is the normal,
yeah,
and you feel this emptiness or lonely inside, and you give it all up, then everyone thinks you're crazy. Because I had, the Ken and Barbie wedding when I was young, and then I had the 2 children, and I had the successful husband who he's a wonderful man, and there was an emptiness inside, and I really judged myself for that.
Yeah, because really you're supposed to feel grateful. Is that, like you shouldn't feel
to be happy.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be happy. Yeah.
Yeah. And those things aren't necessarily, I feel like that happens a lot. People feel guilty for being unfulfilled with those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And also they stay trapped too. So with what Neerava's just described there, you took the courage to move away from that situation, but there's so many people that have that normality, whatever it's supposed to be defined as, and yet they're trapped in it, extremely lonely, extremely unhappy, and extremely unfulfilled, but they wouldn't let go because it's apparently what was supposed to be enough.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of other people are like, you have this, and it's like, okay, I don't want to let go of something good. And yeah, I could see how that would create a lot of fear and confusion inside.
Except the tricky part is that, yes, I let that go because I knew something was missing. But again, I was looking outside of myself.
Still.
Right? So it's been, that was kind of 18 years ago where I started to face that. I guess it's been, 17 years of leaving, the father of my children and all that came with that. But I was looking for something outside of me, and I still guess that it needed to happen anyways. But the bottom line is, with whatever it is that's causing the loneliness, the solution is never going to be outside. It's always about going inside and finding ourselves, finding that, that authentic being inside of us that's always there, but we're just like, oh, well, if I have this, or, or if that happens, or if I just find the good relationship or the right job, or, the right community.
I've been there. If I just had the right job, the right relationship, the right this, the right that, the long list of things that if I got these, everything would be fine.
Yeah. And even when I was watching Meghan Markle marry Prince Harry the other day, there's a part of me that snuggled up in my blanket, sort of wanting to see whether that was reliving the experience of watching Princess Diana marry Charles. And there's a lot more maturity that's happened in me in the years in between. But what I really noticed when I was listening to the reviews around that was the conversations with the little girls. Like, oh, if that's possible for Meghan Markle, then imagine what's possible for me, because she married a prince. And there was a part of me that was really sad that the wedding still represented how we are going to get some magical thing happen outside of us, and that apparently the partner that we're going to marry is the thing that makes it all so complete. Because that fairy tale is so damaging for every human being, female and male, because your inner fulfillment does not lie in the person outside of you, whoever they are, whether they're a prince or not. And my mind did go into thinking about Princess Diana, how she felt extremely lonely in that marriage.
Yeah, that gets forgotten in the fairy tale, like, beauty of what's happening, and it has that magical quality to it. But you're right, yeah.
It's a hypnosis.
I felt the sadness of kids being told that when you said that.
Oh, I heard them speaking it. I heard them sharing in microphones. You know, and I'm brown and I'm black, and if this is what's possible for Meghan Markle. Like, I just can't believe what's possible for me now, and I felt really sad because the hypnosis gets extremely stronger. And I don't like it when it's happening for the new generation, because little 8-year-olds and 7-year-olds deserve better. They need to be guided and given the education that we've struggled to find in our lives now. And that is to learn that there's two tasks really at hand. One is the mind is chattering away, and let's break the link between where you're at and the conversation and thinking that conversation is you. And then as you break that link, find what is actually inside you that's always there, stable, to be with you as your guiding light forever, and make a connection with that place. And once that place is secure, then whatever comes in the outside world, good or bad, however it's labeled, isn't going to disturb you or destabilize you in any way.
Or if it affects you, then you can feel it, but it's not, it's a different, you feel the emotions, or you feel sad, or you feel a little bit heartbroken, but it doesn't mean you're still at home in yourself, which is a priceless feeling. And I just want to mention that when you talk about the voices, those voices, and you said they're the voices that aren't yours, I think, is that the words used? Yeah, because those voices belong to the parents growing up, family members, school, teachers, media, friends, all these people, and then we internalize them, and we keep hearing those voices.
Yeah.
But the voice inside is a totally different voice. It doesn't feel, how does it compare with the head voice that's always kind of chattering at us?
There's no judgment. It's completely neutral. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has sort of like a clarity about it there's a clarity about that voice that feels truthful for every human being. Like, it just feels very truthful for every human being.
Yeah, and compassionate too.
Yeah.
You know, it's been the last few Dalian Method clients that I have facilitated, it has struck me again how little education people have been given about that quiet voice inside, and that it's not the heart. You know, there's this confusion about that. Oh, you know, if I just can feel my heart, then I won't be lonely, and or that's the answer. But there's still all that. You know, it's about the education for going below the heart, down into the belly, into the silence, into that, you know, where all the clarity arises from, all the inspiration. I don't think it's taught anywhere unless you're, you know, studying things like and working with someone like we are.
Yeah.
And it's as people are, you know, hearing me talk about it, it's like I'm talking another language. Right? Until people have, yet everybody's had the experience, even though it's brief or you know, fleeting. Everyone's had that experience of stillness, but then the mind immediately comes in and starts to interpret, right?
But also, there isn't that identity, that there isn't the education, as you said, to know what the mind is.
Yeah. Like
when I read Eckhart Tolle's book, that was my first understanding of the fact that the mind was not me. Up to that point, me and mind were both the same topic, as far as I was concerned.
Exactly. And that's
a good point, is why it's probably like you're speaking a different language, Neerava, because there's no support for those moments of experiences, you know, for a lot of people. And so they don't recognize it. It doesn't get any acknowledgement.
And then what the sense I'm getting right now is that when those experiences happen, the mind interprets it based on its past experiences and attaches it to someone or something, rather than knowing that that's just my being inside. It's not about needing to hear that music, or it's not about needing to be watching a beautiful sunset or with some, you know, very special person. It's none of that.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is the mind is always labeling and attaching and categorizing, and then all of that just gets programmed. And as we grow up, all these programs are running under the surface and, you know, dictating what happens in our life, and we have no idea. We have no idea what's going on. So it's a big mess, isn't it, really?
And now we have all these distractions. So if you feel lonely, you can just, I know I can hop on Netflix and watch a movie, but we can get on social media, or, you know.
But that's a double-edged sword, though, because even when you go on social media and you see so many people that are putting up images about the great things that have just happened in their life, if you're genuinely suffering from loneliness and you've got severe depression alongside it, things like social media actually send you down an even worse rabbit hole than otherwise. It doesn't serve you at all. Yeah. So, and also when you see young people, like I saw a 16-year-old the other day, and I started with the education that says that being depressed does not mean you're broken. It actually means you're extremely wise, and you're sitting here because you're willing to face a transformation that's going to be huge for your life. And many, many people will get very, very close to their grave and never have the sensitivity to feel what you're feeling already, and they will have missed out. Like, her eyes were almost popping out of her head as she was listening to me, where there was a degree of relaxation arising, because obviously the normal idea is that she's not functioning at the level of whatever normal is. Therefore, she's broken. There's something wrong with her, and she's got to get back to being where everybody else is. And yet there's a beautiful sensitivity about being depressed, which means that you've already awoken to a place where there's this huge transformation that's likely to happen if you hold on to that sort of baton in the right way now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's sad to see this is happening to a 16-year-old, but then there's the upside that it's already happening to a 16-year-old. So that child hasn't got to wait until they're 50 or 60 to get sad about life, that they've got the opportunity to get it right now and then live their life.
Yeah. Or never get it and realize on their deathbed, oh my God, I haven't lived.
That's right, and which is much worse still, because then the time's been completely wasted. Yeah. Which is another thing, really. So normal says happiness, success, euphoria, right? And interestingly, with what you've just said there, if you've had a lot of that in your life, you could just miss what you came to life for, because you're not going to get rubbed, and where's your evolution going to be? It's not going to happen. So we're constantly wanting something that's not going to help us to grow.
Yeah.
So it's a trap, isn't it, really?
Well, as humans, we like to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But life brings us challenges so that we don't just live out this, and pardon the phrase, but living a mediocre life, being comfortable. You know, yeah. So the challenges help wake ourselves up out of that mediocrity, actually.
It's interesting, though, because somebody's coming to mind who I met a year ago, and we were having a conversation, and she's just one of these people that's just like, life's great, you know, what's the problem? Like, doesn't ever look inside or question things, or you know, in her description, never gets depressed, had a great childhood, everything's wonderful. And like, what's the big deal? Like, oh, I'm so sorry you had challenges as a child, as she was saying to another person who was in the conversation. And it's her, my experience of her believing that life is so wonderful and great. Like, I felt like I was just talking to this little machine that was saying all these things and putting on this happy face. But my interpretation and experience of her was like someone who just floats along the top of the ocean their whole life, and they have no idea what's down there. And I just thought, you know, it's interesting because I don't know why she's having that life, or you know, what the circumstances are in the journey of her soul. And it doesn't really matter, but it was a wonderful sort of aha moment to see this person says she's happy and everything's great, and yet I felt like there was just a robot there, you know, like not someone who was really present in their body and really living. So that can be confusing for people, because she's going around saying, you know, what's the problem? Just be happy. But that's not that's never the solution for someone who's depressed. That's for sure.
No, but she's not obviously connected with her feelings at all.
Right. But is completely unaware of it.
Yeah.
And it's you know, maybe life is going to throw her a hard ball at some point, and she'll be, you know, forced to feel things that are under the surface. But
that's why we have to be careful in like when people compare themselves to another person and feel like, oh, I'm missing something, or yeah.
But even with that word, like, you know, when you just described happy, I was looking at the phrase, like I was looking at the concept of the ego and how most of it appears to be made out of misery. So the ego, the idea that I'm separate, brings pain. Then the idea that I'm separate and therefore I'm lonely and I'm alone brings pain. Then somebody did this to me or somebody did that to me and I'm a victim, that brings pain. So it like
never enough, and
I'm not enough, and I've not got enough, and I've got to be more, and I've got to achieve more, like all this stuff, right? So that's the ego, which seems to be this massive ball of misery. And I don't know whether this situation will arise for any of us. So we keep taking this layer off of misery and then that layer off, and then another layer off and another layer off. So we're dismantling this big ball, and maybe it's got sort of this big or it's got this big or whatever, right? But it is contracting in terms of the noise that it makes in our head, in terms of how it affects our behavior, in terms of how we actually feel about ourselves, to the point that there is more happiness that surfaces, but it's a different type of happiness. Like it's a contentment that doesn't really need to be spoken, because it's like a contentment just in the peace.
And I don't think you would ever tell, in that state, you would never go to tell other people what's the problem from that kind of energy.
Never, because
what's the problem? Yeah,
because you'd have so much compassion because you've seen all this pain, but you do get to a form of happiness that can't be described as in words, but it is sort of like a spacious contentment.
Yeah, that's a good description from my experience. Yeah.
And so I don't want us to be having this conversation as if happy doesn't exist. There is something that does exist, that is universally the same in all of us.
Yeah.
And that's what we are working towards. Otherwise, why are we doing what we're doing?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a quiet joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just you don't need to say anything. And then you can be in crowds of people that don't see you, that you don't resonate with at all, but then connected with that space inside, there's aloneness, but not loneliness.
Yes, that's it. So there's an aloneness, and that's the message that's really important for anybody that's suffering from feeling lonely, that you eventually get to that place where you can be alone, and it's okay to be alone. In fact, it's beautiful to be alone because you have the freedom that you may not have had, right?
That's an important point of how the aloneness feels as someone, and I think I've mentioned this before in these discussions, neediness. Like I've had a lot of neediness and it's really painful. like, excruciating. And coming out of that, it's just working with these things. It's so worth it, because when you feel that aloneness, it's just being fulfilled from within. And then you can go and you can be around people, and at least my experience is, if someone doesn't understand me or doesn't like me, it's like, well, it's okay. It doesn't really affect me as much. Or if people cancel on me, or all those things that maybe used to trigger something in me before, or used to be hard to deal with, are just no big deal. And it's just a wonderful feeling of strength, where you can go anywhere and you have yourself, that experience. And I still have those little, those moments where I feel like, oh, there's, a voice in me that's afraid or something, but it's not like it was before at all.
Yeah, so that fear to be rejected, or the fear to be alienated or isolated, which all drives you back to that place of feeling lonely. So those fears begin to dissipate, but they're extremely strong at the beginning. And when they surface, they do surface as need. They always surface as, I need something from you, and you're clinging to a person somewhere or something. Mm-hmm. But they all drive you back to this place of feeling lonely first. Because why would we be scared to be rejected unless we are afraid to be lonely? Why would we be scared to be criticized or judged or alienated or ostracized unless we were afraid to be lonely? So it all keeps coming back to this same big thing. And then once you tackle that fear of being lonely with all these little branches, you get more into the place of knowing that you are actually alone, but yet not alone.
Yeah, it's really liberating to have that I'm okay with my aloneness experience. And then I just find it so much more amazing to be around people when I have that connection, because I can really enjoy them. I don't have that anxiety of the past, where it's like, oh, what do they, the mind is going, what do they think of me? Did I say that right? All those things that stop us from being really present and enjoying it's like, how much of life do we miss with each other?
Yeah. And why did that person look at me in that way?
Yeah.
And I wonder what they're going to say when they go home. And
what did I do wrong?
What did I do wrong?
Yeah. And then so many other people are thinking the same thing. We're all walking, with that same kind of cloud over us.
Yeah. We think someone else is busy judging us, but really they've got the same fears as we do. That's
a lot of times,
with the same. I mean, haven't you seen that again and again and again in facilitating people? It's like everyone has the same fears, the same concerns. They just look different.
Yeah. And everybody thinks it's like, oh, my darkness or my negativity or my awful thoughts, and it's like,
no. And also the behaviors that we pick up too, that we pick up from other people, that we've come to see to be mirrored to us. I had a client the other day, and he was absolutely devastated that he'd been copying his father's behavior of being critical of other people and not accepting them for who they are, and so much remorse. And there's so much compassion that you have for this person who's breaking down for the fact that they've seen their own unconsciousness, because that's the only way to become conscious. There is no other formula. You have to go in to see the patterns that haven't worked well, to have the courage to look at them and then become aware of them, so that you then live your life in a more of a conscious state. So of course there's going to be remorse, but to get stuck in the remorse is also dangerous, because it's such a brave thing to have done the work in the first place, to have seen where something's not going well.
Yeah. And Kindi, as you're saying that, what's coming to mind is just reflecting on my journey. It seems that we have to get to a place of enough strength inside to be able to to face these, these ugly things, what Mata calls ugly faces, right? And when I'm looking at people that aren't able to do that, I just have a lot of compassion, because I know that if the strength was there, and if it was time for them to see those parts of themselves, it would be happening. If it's not, then, I mean, I don't know the timing of life, and I just trust that if someone's seeing some really nasty parts of themselves, it's because they're strong enough to do it.
That's right. Yeah. Otherwise, they wouldn't be getting that opportunity to see it.
Yeah, I never could have looked at, I mean, I've seen such nasty things that I was completely
it's like,
but
ouch.
I never would have had the strength to see them, even not that long before I started working with Mata. Like it's such beautiful divine timing how life is unfolding. Because the ego, when we're so identified with these things, there's it's just terrifying to look at them, and anyways, I just trust the timing.
Well, I think the Dalian method is so perfect in the way that it's so compassionate anyway, because it would never peel something off of you that you weren't ready to see, and it does it all systematically in the order that's most appropriate for your journey. So even that process, I think, is astonishing, that it will compassionately guide you step by step.
Yeah.
And it's really your own awareness, even as we guide people in our facilitation, it's like their own awareness that helps them. So it's that we're going back to the inner sense, inner voice.
Maybe we should actually just finalize this conversation today to attempt to articulate like those 3 steps: the inner being, the ego, and then the identification to the mind and the ego. Like maybe we should just do our version of that, so that people that are listening to this, that are brand new to this work, that perhaps might have come in because of the idea of the concept of loneliness, can get some sense of, if you're not surrounded by people and you don't have too many people as your company, what is it that we're actually saying is possible?
Well, I mean, I'll go. If we're feeling lonely, the answer 100% always is because we're not connecting to ourselves inside. So nothing outside of us is ever going to fulfill us. So how to do that? Well, because we use the Dalian method and active meditations to start to remove those layers, all those layers of conditionings and beliefs and patterns that we're completely identified with, and we think that we've been programmed to believe that's who we are. To start looking at, to start to remove those and look inside, find and create opportunities to be, just be with the breath, like as much as possible. Start feeling into the body, start connecting with the body, whatever it is that you can do to move your body, move your breath, move your voice, and work with what you believe you think you are, and start to question everything.
So I'm going to build from what you've just said. So in that space where you referred to the layers, removing the conditionings, the beliefs, the judgments, whatever we've accumulated. So to simplify that, a conditioning could be the idea of the Cinderella story, that we're supposed to get married and happily ever after. So that's a conditioning, an idea that we have that causes us pain, and we have to help remove that from our psyche and from the cells of our body, so that our mind chatter no longer identifies with it and thinks that that is truth. Another example of a conditioning or a belief might be that I don't have any friends, therefore there's something wrong with me, or there's something bad with me, or I'm not enough. Again, that's another idea, because just because you're a human being and you're on this planet, you already are enough. existence has created you. You're already enough. Your task is to get out of those thoughts and beliefs that your mind is saying, and into that space inside that recognizes that you're enough. So the conditionings, beliefs, ideas are a multitude of thought forms, which are basically thoughts that you've had that could be judgmental or negative against yourself or against the world outside you. Plus, they could be lots of habits that you've picked up from your ancestors and your parents and the schooling and people that have been teaching you that tell you that you have to live a certain way. And one of which is not to say the truth of what you really feel and express. So when you meet somebody and you go to say something, as a child, if you said, oh, that looks ugly, or that's too brown, or that's something or other, a parent might have come in and gone, oh, no, that's not nice, be polite. But you've been conditioned into being polite as opposed to being left to be authentic. And then as you express your honest truth, you get a chance to see some of these ideas that may not be serving you. So I'm just helping to simplify something that Neerava just said, so that the work that we're describing becomes a little bit easier for you to touch, so that you know that it's simple aspects of yourself that you're dismantling that are not helping you to feel content and not helping you to be in touch with your inner being.
And that ability to see them as like that they're not who we are.
That's right.
That ability to take a look at these thoughts and beliefs and go, oh, okay, rather than being identified and completely swimming in them. Yeah.
Leela, do you want to add something with that so that our audience get a sense of?
I just know that sometimes those thoughts and emotions can be pretty intense and overwhelming, and we don't see anything outside of them. So when we talk about the being or this inner space or that inner guidance and voice, sometimes people feel like, well, I don't even have one, or that doesn't even feel real for me. It just feels like, it's because the identification is so strong with those unconscious beliefs or conclusions. And when we work with them, feeling and expressing, of course we use the Dalian Method, but also expressing your truth whenever you can, going off what you said, Kindi, we hold back so much and then we wonder why we don't feel good. You're not going to feel good if you're not expressing truly who you are. If you're holding back, trying to please people, it's impossible. I tried really hard. You're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel awful. And, and so just consider that. Start giving yourself finding ways to express your true feelings, a safe space or something like that, instead of just trying to fill the void and follow the voices that say, fit in, get that person to like you. It's just kind of a dead end. Yeah. But it's worth it. I mean, I know a lot of the things we talked about today were a little bit heavy, but it really is worth working through these things and releasing them and feeling your inner strength grow and that inner aloneness. Yeah.
And how about this?
Yeah, Mada's book, In Search of the Miraculous, Healing into Consciousness.
Like, for anyone that's just starting on the path, this is such an incredible guidebook to understanding the nature of the ego and, the human journey. I don't know of any book that serves me better, and that I don't need to read anything else except this book, and then continue to do my own inner work. Because this has helped me incredibly, and the more I read it, as I grow and face my fears and walk through things, the more I understand and the more it helps me go deeper. So yeah, maybe we could put a little link at the bottom of this video. And
that's a good idea, to give people something to read as a roadmap to what's going on. Yeah. And then I guess the last thing I want to share is building off of what you've just said there, Leela. And that is, for some people, they might think, I'm in so much pain. This other thing that's being described, this being, is not even there. but I'm going to use, it's like a light that's there for every single one of us, and it cannot be not there. So it's almost like our promise that as you peel away, you will get in touch with that light that does shine extremely strongly like the sun inside you. It's impossible that it can't be there.
It just gets buried under so much stuff. And when you start peeling away, there's no exceptions. No one is so awful or have done really awful things or have had awful things done to them where the light is extinguished. And I used to think that, like, okay, I don't really have anything like that. The talk of being sounded like not in my world. Yeah. But actually it's everyone. So yeah.
So it's basically a light that exists inside you. And it's always been there. It's just clouded over with mess. And that mess is called conditionings, beliefs, outdated ideas that don't serve you. And all you do is you start with your natural state of how you feel. So if you're feeling extremely lonely, that's where you begin. And you deal with that pain first so that that layer or slither comes off and a little bit of strength comes in, which always comes in from that light from inside. Yeah. And you feel your own power.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation today.
Anybody's watching this and wants to reach out, yeah, please do. You can private message us wherever you see this, or comment, or ask questions. Okay. Thank you
for listening, everybody.